Good morning. I am pleased to submit the fiscal year 2016 executive budget to my board colleagues and to the public for your consideration and approval. This budget provides the roadmap and the means to accomplish our vision. It expresses our values, our goals, and if we've done our jobs right, it reflects the needs and desires of our community. We are in better financial shape this year than we have been in many years. And that gives us the opportunity and the responsibility to make important, targeted investments in areas that prevent crises and set families up for success. Those areas include housing, early mental health treatment, school attendance, and juvenile crime prevention. Paramount among these is housing, the foundation of a stable, healthy, and productive life. July Jackson could barely make the payments on her family's two-bedroom apartment after the rent went up. Then she dropped a bottle of perfume down the toilet and spent all of her savings to hire a plumber. She got behind in her rent and was evicted. She and her two kids moved in with relatives, then into their car, and then into a shelter. She says the embarrassment and danger of homelessness are hardest on her kids. Shamira Thomas came to Oregon with her three kids to escape a domestic violent situation, an abuser who broke the bones in her face. But in Portland, she couldn't find an affordable apartment, and her family landed in a shelter. Each morning, her boys arrive at their elementary school, hungry and tired. Staff complain that her kids are dirty, she says. She and her 3-year-old daughter spend their day in their car, driving around and sleeping. The recession is over, but the inequities experienced by too many in our community remain. Last year, 3,000 kids spent some portion of their nights without a bed of their own. And last night, more than 1,800 people slept on our sidewalks. I will not continue to let this happen. My executive budget includes $2 million in ongoing funding to help families, youth, and veterans find a permanent home. And for the first time ever, we are putting $5 million into a housing development fund to increase the number of affordable units in our county. These investments, together with those proposed in Mayor Hale's budget, will allow us to meet our shared commitment to end veterans' homelessness, ensure that no family is ever turned away from emergency shelter, and expand the housing resources available to the hundreds of families and youth experiencing homelessness in our community every night. Children are another focus of this budget. Health experts often talk about the effects that homelessness, hunger, and violence can have on the development of a child's brain. If Multnomah County is to realize our potential now and in the future, we need to make sure that children develop intellectually, emotionally, and physically. My executive budget includes funding for new Sun schools in Park Rose, Gresham, and Reynolds school districts. I've expanded our early kindergarten transition program and our school attendance initiative in all 6 school districts to work intensively with students who face barriers to being successful in school. I'm also proposing that we invest more in mental health services in our schools. Right now, only 1 in 4 schools in our county have a dedicated mental health consultant. One of those is at Oliver Elementary, where nearly 90% of the students live in poverty. The school principal, Laura Fendall, says many of her kids begin school with undiagnosed behavioral, emotional, and learning disorders. Many more would benefit from a trained mental health therapist to cope with trauma they may have experienced at home or in their neighborhoods. More than 60% of Laura's students are kids of color. And even when families are open to receiving treatment for their children, she asks, where do you find a Spanish-speaking therapist? And if you do find one, there's a very long wait. That's why I'm working with school districts to expand culturally specific mental health services in schools with a focus on Latino and African American students. On our county-wide health efforts, I am proud that Multnomah County has been at the forefront of healthcare reform and has led the effort to better integrate physical, dental, and behavioral health services. But one area that we haven't done enough is to reduce racial and ethnic disparities. Several months ago, we published a report that highlights the extent to which our communities of color face higher rates of unemployment, poverty, and sickness. We vowed to make changes, and my proposed budget includes new investments to narrow that divide. We've added more than $1 million for culturally specific health services for 5 underserved communities, and we've added $140,000 for training community health workers to improve services to the refugee and African immigrant community. We've also set aside $1 million for the new Behavioral Health Center, designed to provide specialized care and support for individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. This is a collaborative effort led by hospitals, local mental health providers, city and county leaders to strengthen our crisis safety net. About half of our general fund budget goes to public safety. This proposed budget maintains our current 1,310 jail beds and continues to fund our adult and juvenile services division. These are all important functions, and I am proud of the public safety professionals who keep our community safe. But I am concerned about the sharp uptick in youth violence this year. Last month, a grand jury indicted 16-year-old Dante Mathis Jr. on murder charges for having fired a gun into a crowd on a Sweet 16 party. In the same month, 16-year-old Marquise Murphy pleaded guilty to firing off shots and injuring 4 outside of Rosemary Anderson High School. The Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, POIC, has begun doing something we should all get behind. Their staff is reaching kids the very first time they get in trouble and helping them get back on track. What if Dante and Marquise had had that type of mentorship? They're just kids. They're kids who made some really bad choices. Sang Dao is one of those kids. He's only 25 and he's already served 8 years in prison for attempted murder. Today, he's applying for graduate school and working with teens in our youth detention facility. What if someone had understood his struggles and stepped in when he got into his first fist fight at 13? Well, I'm done asking what if. That's why I'm including a juvenile justice diversion program in my proposed budget. This program will bring together community providers, the court system, school districts, and law enforcement to keep first-time offenders out of the justice system. Another integral part of our public safety system is our courthouse. And fixing this seismically unsafe and functionally obsolete building is my top capital priority. The executive budget dedicates $28 million to build a new courthouse, a project essential to our judicial system and to the safety of the 600,000 people who enter that building every year. A budget address would not be complete without talking about how I approached the funding decisions and some of the challenges that we see on the horizon. First and foremost is the change to PERS rates. Rates have been set for the next 2 years, but we know that they're going to go up, and we need to be prepared. I'm also mindful of past budget years where we had to make painful cuts to vital programs. I haven't forgotten those lessons, which is why this proposed budget includes some important safeguards for the future. I've balanced the budget for the next 5 years, fully funded our reserves, followed the county's budget and finance policies by spending one-time only dollars on one-time only purposes, and allocated more than 50% of our one-time only funds on capital needs, including the new courthouse. Every dollar we spend here is one less dollar we'll have to finance later. This proposed budget gives us the opportunity to both act responsibly to protect our long-term financial health and to make meaningful changes in people's lives right now. But to do this, we must resist the temptation to spend our surplus in an untargeted and unsustainable way. We should instead act together to balance the needs of today against the challenges of tomorrow. Today's release of this executive budget could not have come together without the work of many individuals. I want to thank my colleagues, Commissioners Jules Bailey, Loretta Smith, Judy Shiprack, and Diane McKeel, for their invaluable insight and advice. My thanks also to District Attorney Rod Underhill, Sheriff Dan Staten, and County Auditor Steve March for their input. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the steady hands of Budget Director Karen Kita and her staff, who bring the highest professional standards to their analysis. Each entry reflects the many contributions of department directors, department leaders, and their staffs. And finally, I would like to thank the Multnomah County Citizen Budget Advisory Committee. These dedicated volunteers spend hours analyzing programs, reviewing funding requests, and providing insight into the best way to spend the public's dollars. This is the beginning of our budget deliberations, and I look forward to the many conversations that we will have over the next month and a half. Thank you.